For years, my son humiliated me, telling me I smelled, until one night, I stopped paying the mortgage on the mansion that made him feel so superior. I never thought my own son would turn me into a stranger in a house I had built myself. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would share. And if you, for a second, feel like this sounds familiar, I just ask that you leave a like and subscribe. It will help me to keep unburdening myself. My name is Helen Davis. I'm 63 years old, and I live in a small neighborhood in East Los Angeles, where the smell of fresh tortillas from the panaderia mixes with the exhaust from the city buses rumbling down Cesar Chavez Avenue. My hands, wrinkled from decades of work at a downtown dry cleaner's, know every fold of the shirts I pressed to support my family after my husband left us 20 years ago. It was a Tuesday afternoon when everything changed. I was arriving for a visit at my son Ethan's house in Beverly Hills, that area where the homes have manicured lawns that look like golf courses, and the garage's house cars that cost more than I've earned in my entire life. I brought with me a reusable tote from the farmer's market on Olvera Street, filled with poblano peppers, tomatoes as red as hearts, and the fresh tortillas from Mrs. Carmen's stand that my granddaughter, Sophia, loved so much. The blue uniform from the dry cleaners still clung to me when I rang the bell of that carved wooden door I had helped pay for. My son opened it, and his face, dear God, his face twisted into a grimace I will never forget. It was as if he'd seen something disgusting, something that made him nauseous. "Mom, please, shower before you come over. Your things, your smell, it gets into the Italian leather sofas. This is a high-end home, you understand? It's not like your apartment downtown." The words hit me like stones. My granddaughter Sophia, just 5 years old, was playing on the Persian rug the color of clouds. She looked at me with those big eyes and then looked down, as if I really did stink. As if the grandmother who used to hold her in her arms as a baby was now something dirty, something to be hidden. My daughter-in-law, Patricia, emerged from the designer kitchen with her glass of white wine in hand, the one she always held like a shield against my presence. She said nothing, but her smile, that dry, calculated smile she shot at me every time I arrived with my market bag, with my humble little gifts, with my working grandmother's love. "It's just about respect, Mom. We have business partners over, clients from my accounting firm. You get it, right?" Ethan continued, adjusting the collar of his Ralph Lauren shirt, the very kind I had ironed for him when he was in high school and worked cleaning offices to pay for his textbooks. I nodded. I swallowed the shame like someone swallowing a whole jalapeno. And that same afternoon, as always, I transferred the $2,500 for the monthly mortgage payment from my Bank of America account, because if I didn't pay, he wouldn't be able to maintain the status he needed for his job. The 3-story house with a pool and garden was in both our names. He hadn't qualified for the loan on his own. I had put my signature, my income, my credit history, built penny by penny over decades of paying everything on time, on the line. For 11 years, I was the one who covered most of the payments, who took money from my tin savings can for the down payments, who stayed up late calculating how to stretch my salary so my son could have his dream house. But never, not once, did I have a key to that house. I never slept a single night in those bedrooms with central air. They didn't even offer me the small guest room. I was a visitor, an unwelcome visitor, a visitor who arrived with the smell of the city bus clinging to her clothes and the exhaustion of 8 hours on her feet amid the vapors of cleaning chemicals. At Christmas dinners, they sat me at the head of the dining room table, far from everyone, near the door to the kitchen. For Mother's Day, they gave me a box of Russell Stover chocolates. "So you have something sweet back at your place," Patricia said, emphasizing that word, back. Back where, according to them, the air smelled of dampness, of street tacos, of poverty. Back where I paid my own rent with what I had left after maintaining their wealthy life. The most painful memory was looking at the family photos in their living room. In all of them, there were the 3 of them, Ethan, Patricia, and Sophia. Smiling, hugging, perfect. I was in none of them. It was as if my existence were a shameful secret to be kept hidden from important guests, from friends at the country club, from the society they had built on my sacrifices. That night, as the last ray of sun filtered through the windows of my apartment in Boyle Heights, I sat in my plastic chair looking at the bank receipt. Another month, another payment, another humiliation bought with my money. The smell of the tacos from the truck on the corner wafted up to my window, mixing with the sound of the bells from St. Paul's Church. And for the first time in years, I wondered if the problem wasn't my smell, but their blindness to see all the love behind every dollar I put in their hands. The following months became a routine of silent pain that I myself had allowed to be built. Every 15 days, religiously, my bi-weekly paycheck appeared in my bank account. $1,900 that vanished like water through my fingers, $1,500 for my apartment rent, $800 for my personal expenses, and the rest. The rest flew straight to that house where I wasn't welcome. I remember with a clarity that hurts me the day I decided to bring Sophia the little pink dress I had seen at the Tuesday flea market. It was her size, with embroidered flowers that reminded me of the ones my mother used to make when I was little. I had bought it with the last $10 I had left for the week, but the thought of seeing my granddaughter smile was worth more than any meal. When I arrived at the house, Patricia met me at the door with that look I knew all too well. Her eyes scanned my clothes from top to bottom, my faded polyester blouse, my vinyl shoes that squeaked against the marble of the foyer, my woven tote bag that contrasted brutally with her Louis Vuitton purse. "Oh, Helen, what a thought," she said, taking the small plastic bag without even looking inside. "But you know Sophia has a walk-in closet full of clothes. Little Patty has designers who dress her. Maybe you can save this for, I don't know, when she's playing in the yard. Little Patty." That's what she called my granddaughter, as if sharing a name with Patricia's mother was an inconvenient coincidence that had to be minimized, as if I were the cheap version, the knockoff of the elegant woman she represented. That day, I stood in the living room for 3 hours. 3 hours watching my granddaughter play with expensive toys, while Patricia talked on the phone, organizing dinners with people on their level. No one offered me a glass of water. No one asked how my week had been, if my legs ached from standing so long at the dry cleaners, if I needed anything. I was a piece of furniture, an ugly piece that clashed with the decor, but one that paid the monthly installments for all the other beautiful furniture. The first time I tried to use the guest bathroom, Patricia stopped me with an icy smile. "Oh, Helen, maybe you should use the one upstairs. It's just that we had this one professionally cleaned with special products, and Ethan doesn't want it to get smudged before the Hernandezes come for dinner." I climbed the marble stairs with the wrought iron banister that I had seen in the catalog when we chose the finishes. My footsteps echoed in the silence of that house that was too big, too cold, too perfect to house the imperfect love of a working grandmother. The upstairs bathroom had towels that felt like clouds, and imported soaps with scents I had never experienced. I washed my hands carefully, as if touching anything could leave evidence of my presence. In the mirror, I saw my reflection, a 63-year-old woman with her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wrinkles etched by years of financial worries, skin dried out by the chemicals from the dry cleaners. Was that what they saw when they looked at me? A stain on their perfection? When I came downstairs, I heard the conversation that would forever change my perception of this family I was supporting. "I don't know why she always comes without calling," Patricia was saying, her voice drifting from the kitchen. "It's awkward, Ethan. My friends ask who that woman is who arrives by bus. Monica saw her yesterday and asked me if she was the cleaning lady. I know, honey, but we can't be cruel. At the end of the day, she pays a good chunk of the mortgage. Without her contributions, we couldn't live like this. A good chunk. As if my $2,500 a month were a generous tip, and not the 80% of the mortgage payment I covered religiously for 11 years. But she smells, Ethan. She smells poor. And Sophia is starting to notice. Yesterday, she asked me why Grandma's hands were so rough and why her clothes looked old. I already talked to her about showering before she comes. I told her it was a high-end home. They laughed. They both laughed as if it were the funniest joke in the world, as if my dignity were their afternoon's entertainment. That day, I returned to my apartment with my heart broken into pieces so small, I thought I could never put it back together. I sat on my single bed, the one I'd slept in alone since my husband left, and pulled out the notebook from my nightstand where I wrote down all my expenses, page after page of sacrifices, Ethan's mortgage, $2,500. Sophia's birthday, $100. Ethan's cold medicine, $50. Sophia's extra tuition, $400. For 11 years, I had filled that notebook with numbers that represented my sleepless nights, my cold meals, my mended shoes, my gray hair I didn't dye because the money for the salon went to their needs. And they saw me as the cleaning lady. That night I called my sister, Hope, the only family I had left. She lives in Austin with her husband, and although we don't talk often, we've always maintained that silent connection that only women who have raised children alone understand. Hope, do you think I smell bad? I asked without any preamble. What are you talking about, Helen? Why would you ask me that? Ethan says I stink, that his house smells bad when I visit. The silence on the other end of the phone was more painful than any answer. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled with anger. That boy is out of line. You raised him, you gave him everything, and this is how he repays you? But maybe I do smell bad, Hope. I work with chemicals. I sweat a lot. I don't have money for expensive perfumes. No! She shouted through the phone. You smell like honest work, like effort, like a mother who sacrifices. If he can't see that, the problem isn't your smell. It's his heart. I hung up and sat in the darkness of my living room, watching the lights of the neighboring buildings where other families were having dinner together, hugging, loving each other without conditions. At the dry cleaners, I had a customer, Mrs. Rosario, who always told me how her children fought over who would take her out to lunch on Sundays, who would buy her medicine, who had the honor of taking care of her. And I had to beg for a little respect in a house that my own hands had built, dollar by dollar. That dawn, as the noise of the first trucks woke me up like every other day, I made a decision that terrified me as much as it liberated me. I was going to start documenting everything, every payment, every humiliation, every moment they treated me like what I should never have allowed myself to become, a stranger in my own family. The day of my 63rd birthday dawned like any other Tuesday. I got up at 5 in the morning, prepared my coffee in the old pot I'd had since Ethan was a teenager, and got ready for another day at the dry cleaners. The only difference was that this morning I had allowed myself a small luxury. I bought a sweet pastry from Mr. Felipe's Panaderia to go with my coffee. It was my way of celebrating alone, of giving myself a small gift that no one else would remember. At 2 in the afternoon, when my shift ended, I checked my phone, hoping for a message. Nothing. Not a call, not a text, not even one of those automated messages from Verizon wishing me a happy birthday. I called Ethan with that mix of hope and terror that only a mother can understand. Hello? He answered, his voice distracted. In the background, I could hear music, laughter, the sounds of a gathering at his house. Hi, son. How are you? Oh, Mom. I'm busy. We have guests over for a business dinner. Do you need something urgent? I was quiet for a few seconds, waiting for him to remember, for his memory to somehow kick in and say, Happy birthday, Mom. But the silence stretched until it became awkward. No, son. It's nothing urgent. I lied, swallowing my tears. Okay, well, I'll call you tomorrow. Bye. He hung up without waiting for my reply. I stood there, in the middle of the busy street, phone in hand, with people rushing past me as if I were invisible. A man selling balloons looked at me with pity, perhaps noticing the tears rolling down my cheeks. That night, I ate leftover refried beans for dinner, alone, with cold tortillas and the piece of pastry I had saved. I turned on the radio to listen to music from my time, those songs by Patsy Cline and Johnny Cash that reminded me of when I had dreams, when I believed that the love of children was eternal and unbreakable. 3 days later, my phone rang. It was Patricia. Oh, Helen, I totally forgot Tuesday was your birthday. I'm so sorry. We just had a super busy week with the client dinner. Ethan closed a huge deal, and we were celebrating. Super busy. As if remembering the mother who maintained their lifestyle was a task that required a calendar reminder. Don't worry about it, dear, I replied, because that's what I always did. Forgave those who hurt me. We'll make it up to you, okay? The next time you come over, we'll give you your late gift. The next time you come over, as if visiting the house I paid for was a privilege they granted me out of charity. But the worst was yet to come. A week later, while cleaning the machines at the dry cleaners, I felt a sharp pain in my chest that made me double over the counter. It was as if someone had stabbed me between the ribs. My hands trembled, my vision blurred, and for a moment I thought I was going to faint. Mr. Roberts, my boss, saw me and came over, concerned. "Helen, are you okay? You look very pale." "It's just fatigue, Mr. Roberts. It'll pass." But it didn't pass. The pain continued for 3 days, accompanied by an exhaustion I had never felt before. It was as if my body was billing me for all the years of stress, all the sleepless nights worrying about money, all the humiliations swallowed in silence. I called Ethan from the doctor's office where I had gone after Mr. Roberts forced me to seek medical attention. "Son, I'm at the doctor's. My heart isn't doing well." "Really? Is it serious?" he asked, but his voice sounded more irritated than concerned, as if my health was an inconvenience in his busy day. "I don't know yet. The doctor is going to run some tests. I just wanted to let you know in case—" "Oh, Mom, don't be so dramatic. It's probably just stress. You always worry about everything. Take care of yourself and let me know if it's anything serious, okay?" The doctor explained that I had severe hypertension and that my heart was working too hard. She prescribed medication that cost $125 a week, money I didn't have because it all went to maintaining my son's lifestyle. "Mrs. Davis, this is serious. You need to reduce stress, eat better, get more rest. If you don't take care of your health, there could be grave consequences." That night, sitting on my bed with the medication on the nightstand, I did the math. If I bought the heart pills, I couldn't pay the electric bill. If I paid the electric bill, I wouldn't have enough for food for the week. If I bought food, I couldn't make my full contribution to Ethan's mortgage. I decided to buy only half of the medication and eat once a day so I could make the house payment. Because in my confused mind, I still believed that keeping my son happy was more important than keeping myself alive. 2 weeks later, after I had lost 10 pounds and my blood pressure was still sky high, I called Ethan again. "Son, I need to tell you something important. The doctor says I have heart problems and—" "Mom, I can't talk right now. I'm in a very important meeting. I'll call you back." He never called back. The following Saturday, I decided to go to the house unannounced. I needed to see them, to feel that I was still part of a family, that my illness mattered to someone. I arrived as always, with my market bag and a homemade flan I had made with my last few eggs. Patricia opened the door in a silk robe, a green mask on her face. "Oh, Helen, what a shame for you to come now. I'm having my at-home spa day. Saturdays are my relaxation days, you know. I just came to say hi to Sophia for a little while. She's at her piano lesson. You know, we're investing a lot in her cultural education. We don't want her to grow up ordinary. Ordinary." The word stabbed me in the chest like a thorn. I was the ordinary thing to be avoided. "That's fine. I just wanted to leave this flan I made." Patricia took the glass container without even looking at it. "Oh, how thoughtful. But you know Sophia can't eat homemade sweets. Her nutritionist says only organic, controlled foods. Maybe you can give this to someone else." She rejected my flan. She rejected the 3 hours I had spent whisking, slow cooking, waiting for it to be perfect. She rejected the love I had put into every carefully measured spoonful of sugar. When I returned to my apartment that afternoon, the glass container felt as heavy as a tombstone in my hands. I sat in my plastic chair, and for the first time in 11 years, I didn't transfer the mortgage money. Not because I had made a conscious decision, but because I was frozen, paralyzed by a sadness so deep it robbed me of the ability to even move my fingers. It was as if my body knew something my mind didn't want to accept yet, that I was paying to be humiliated, that I was buying my own contempt, that every dollar I gave was another coin in the price of my lost dignity. That night, as I listened to the neighbors laughing in the shared courtyard, I understood with painful clarity that my son didn't see me as his mother. He saw me as his employee, an employee who worked for free, who paid for the privilege of being mistreated, and who would never, ever have the right to quit. Until that night. On Monday morning, as I was getting my uniform ready for the dry cleaners, The phone rang with the desperate insistence that only emergency calls have. It was Ethan, and for the first time in months, his voice sounded genuinely alarmed. "Mom, what happened with the house payment?" The bank called saying the transfer never arrived. I remained silent, holding the receiver as if it were a live grenade. I hadn't planned this moment. I didn't have a speech prepared. The day had simply come when my body had refused to continue participating in my own humiliation. "I forgot," I lied, because I still didn't have the courage to tell the whole truth. "You forgot? Mom, it's been 11 years of you never forgetting. Are you okay? Did something happen?" For a second, just for a second, I thought there might be genuine concern in his voice. Maybe he had finally realized that his mother was a human being with feelings, with limits, with the capacity to break. "I've been sick, son. My heart. I told you, but—" "Oh, right. I remember you said something. But tell me, when can you make the transfer?" "Patricia already scheduled the automatic debit for tomorrow, and if the money isn't there, we're going to get hit with interest charges." Patricia already scheduled. As if my money were hers by divine right. As if my paychecks existed solely to maintain her comfort. "I don't know, Ethan. Let me see how I feel." "How you feel?" "Mom, this is serious. This isn't the time for drama. We need that money today." Drama. My heart condition. My loneliness. My forgotten birthday. It was all drama to him. I hung up without saying goodbye. Something I had never done in my entire life. My hands trembled so much I had to sit on the bed to keep from falling. I had crossed an invisible line, and on the other side was an unknown territory that terrified me as much as it liberated me. An hour later, Patricia was at my apartment door, knocking as if she were the police. She had never been to my home. In 11 years, she had never set foot in my humble apartment in Boyle Heights. Seeing her there, with her designer clothes completely out of place against the peeling paint of my building's hallway, was surreal. "Helen, can we talk?" she said with that fake smile she used when she needed something. I let her in, and she perched on the edge of my second-hand armchair as if she were afraid of catching poverty. Her eyes scanned my living room with a mixture of pity and contempt I knew all too well: the unpainted walls, my old but clean furniture, the tube television I'd had for 15 years. "Listen, I don't know what's going on with you and Ethan, but he's very upset about the payment. He says you forgot, but you never forget anything. Is there a problem?" "I'm sick, Patricia. My heart." "Oh, right," he told me. "But you can control that with a few little pills, can't you? My mother had that too, and she's perfectly fine now. It's just a matter of taking a little better care of yourself. Little pills. As if severe hypertension were a common cold cured with chamomile tea. The pills cost $125 a week. Really? That's expensive. But well, health comes first, right? That's exactly why we need everything to be in order with the house. We can't have additional stress from payment problems. We can't." As if she contributed a single dollar. As if my health crises were inconveniences affecting her peace of mind. "Patricia, I've been thinking—" "Oh, Helen, don't think so much. Just transfer the money now and get it over with. I have the account number here on my phone. We can go to a 7-Eleven and do it quickly." I stared at this woman who had come to my house for the first time in 11 years, not to ask how I was, not to show interest in my health, but to collect. To make sure the goose that laid the golden eggs kept laying. "I'm not going to 7-Eleven, Patricia." "Why not? Don't you have the money?" The question hit me like a slap. Of course I had the money. I always had their damned money, sacrificing my food, my medicine, my dignity to make sure they lived like royalty. Yes, I have the money. Then what's the problem? The problem. As if I were the problem. As if my fatigue, my illness, my need to be treated like a human being were irrational obstacles to her comfort. The problem is that I'm tired. Tired of what? I don't understand. She didn't understand. She genuinely didn't understand how someone could get tired of being humiliated, disrespected, treated like an ATM with feelings. Tired of everything, Patricia. She stood up with that impatient expression she got when Sophia threw a tantrum. "Well, you can rest later. Right now, we need to solve the payment issue. Ethan is super stressed, and so am I. We can't live like this." They were stressed. They couldn't live like this. While I was slowly dying of hypertension and loneliness, they were suffering the terrible inconvenience of having to ask for money from the person who always gave it to them. I'm not paying today. The words left my mouth before my mind could stop them. Patricia looked at me as if I had just uttered a blasphemy. What do you mean you're not going to pay? You heard me. I'm not paying today. But why? What's wrong with you? Are you angry about something? Angry about something. As if my pain were a temporary whim, a tantrum that would pass after a good scolding. I'm not angry. I'm tired. Oh, Helen, you don't understand. If you don't pay, they'll charge us interest. And then next month it will accumulate. It's worse for everyone. For everyone. It was always for everyone. But the consequences were always just for me. Patricia left my apartment, slamming the door so hard it rattled the windows in my living room. From the window, I watched her get into her new model Honda CR-V, the one that had also been bought with my savings when she got pregnant and needed something safe to transport the baby. 2 hours later, Sophia arrived with Patricia's sister, a young woman who worked as a teacher and had always treated me with respect. The little girl ran to me with those open arms that were the only pure thing left in this poisoned family. Grandma, why is my daddy sad? The question broke my heart. Sophia didn't understand why her parents were upset, why there was tension in the air, why she had been sent with her aunt while they solved adult problems. Is your daddy sad, sweetie? Yes. He says you don't want to help us anymore. And my mommy cried when she talked on the phone with Grandma Patricia. Patricia had called her own mother. She had probably told a version where I was the villain, the difficult mother-in-law who had gone crazy and was now emotionally blackmailing them. Grandma, don't you love us anymore? Sophia's eyes, so much like Ethan's when he was a boy, looked at me with an innocence that tore me apart. This child was not to blame for anything. She hadn't asked to be born into a family that confused love with financial transactions. Of course I love you, my darling. I love you so much. Then why don't you want to help Daddy? How could I explain to a 5-year-old that her grandmother had reached the limit of her emotional endurance? How could I make her understand that love isn't shown just by giving money, but also by receiving respect, affection, consideration? Sometimes, sweetheart, adults need to think things through. Sophia's aunt looked at me with understanding. She was the only person in this whole family who saw me as a complete human being, not an economic function. Mrs. Davis, if you need to talk to someone, I'm here. For the first time in weeks, someone offered me their ear without expecting anything in return. But it was too late for half measures. The decision was made, even if I myself didn't know what the consequences would be. That night, Sophia slept with me in my small bed. Her gentle breathing was the only thing that gave me peace in the midst of the storm I had unleashed. As I watched her sleep, I wondered if I was being a selfish grandmother, or if I was finally learning to value myself. The next day, I knew they would come for me with heavy artillery. But for the first time in years, I didn't care. On Wednesday morning, I woke up with a strange feeling. For the first time in years, I had slept through the night without waking up at 3 a.m. worrying about money. I hadn't checked my phone to see if I had urgent messages from Ethan asking for money for some emergency. I hadn't mentally calculated how much I had left in my account after the mortgage payment. It was as if my body had remembered what it felt like to truly rest. I got up slowly, made my coffee with the calmness of someone in no hurry to get anywhere. It was my day off from the dry cleaners, and for the first time in a long time, I had no family obligations to fulfill. I didn't have to rush to the market to buy things to take to Sophia. I didn't have to go to the bank to make transfers. I didn't have to invent excuses to visit a house where I wasn't welcome. I sat in my plastic chair with the steaming mug between my hands and looked out the window at the common courtyard where my neighbor, Carmen, was hanging her laundry. She waved at me, as she did every morning. It was a simple gesture, but in that moment, I realized it was more genuine affection than I had received from my own family in months. Good morning, Helen. How are you today? I'm well, Carmen. Very well. And I really did feel well, as if I had stopped carrying an invisible backpack full of rocks. Around 10, the phone rang. I looked at the screen. Ethan. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. 5 minutes later, it rang again. Again, I let it go. On the third try, I answered. Mom, why aren't you answering? I've been calling you for an hour. I was busy. Busy with what? It's your day off. As if he knew my schedule by heart. As if my free time were his property. Busy drinking coffee. Calmly. Mom, we need to talk. This is getting out of control. Patricia didn't sleep at all last night from worry. Patricia didn't sleep from worry. While I had spent years not sleeping, worrying about their expenses, their whims, their needs, now it turned out she was the victim of my decision to take care of my own mental health. What do we need to talk about, Ethan? About the house payment. It's 2 days late. You've never done this before. I've never been this sick before. But we already told you the blood pressure thing is managed with medicine. That's no excuse to stop fulfilling your responsibilities. My responsibilities. When had I signed a contract that obligated me to support my adult son and his family for the rest of my life? Ethan, do you believe I'm responsible for paying for your house? The silence on the other end was so long I thought the call had dropped. What do you mean, am I responsible? Mom, we've been doing this for 11 years. It's our agreement. What agreement? I don't remember signing anything that said I would support you for the rest of your life. But you've always wanted to help. You've always said that family helps each other. I've always wanted to help. That was true. But helping didn't mean being exploited. Helping didn't mean giving up my dignity, my health, my right to be treated with respect. Family helps each other, yes, but they also respect each other. What do you mean by that? I mean, I'm tired of being treated like your cleaning lady. I'm tired of being told I stink. I'm tired of not even being able to use the bathroom in my own house. Oh, Mom, that was a misunderstanding. You know it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't a big deal. My humiliation, my pain, my trampled dignity, none of it was a big deal, in his opinion. It was a big deal to me, Ethan. Okay, fine. Patricia and I will talk and we'll change things. But we need you to make the payment today. The interest is already piling up. We'll change things. As if my dignity were something that could be fixed with a quick conversation, like adjusting an employee's work schedule. I'm not paying today, Ethan. What? I said I'm not paying today. But until when? When are you going to pay? I don't know. And I really didn't know. For the first time in 11 years, I didn't have a plan, a date, a promise to make him. I only had the certainty that I was not going to continue participating in my own humiliation. I hung up before he could respond and turned off my phone. I sat in my living room, listening to the normal sounds of life. Children playing in the courtyard, Mr. Aurelio's radio playing music from the 80s, the sound of tortillas being pressed at the corner shop, sounds of people living without drama, without exploitation, without emotionally blackmailing families. For the first time in years, I went for a walk with no destination. I walked through the streets of my neighborhood as if I were discovering them for the first time. I stopped at the Grand Central Market, not to buy things to take to Ethan's house, but to buy something nice for myself. I craved some strawberries and bought them without calculating if I could afford them after the mortgage payment, because there was going to be no mortgage payment. At the fruit stand, the owner, Ramiro, saw me and smiled. Mrs. Davis, how are you? You look different today. I different how? I don't know. More peaceful. Lighter. That's exactly how I felt. As if I had stopped carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. I bought the most beautiful strawberries he had, some small flowers to put on my table, and one of those expensive pastries I never allowed myself because it was an unnecessary expense. I walked back to my apartment enjoying the sun on my face, the fresh air, the freedom of not having to rush to fulfill some family obligation. In my apartment, I arranged the flowers in a glass and put them in the center of my table. I cut the strawberries and ate them slowly, savoring each bite as if it were the first time I had tasted something sweet. I had the pastry with freshly brewed coffee, and for the first time in years, I ate something delicious without feeling guilty for spending money on myself. That afternoon, while watching a telenovela on my old TV, I realized something surprising. I didn't miss the constant tension. I didn't miss being glued to my phone, waiting for the next demand for money. I didn't miss the anxiety of calculating if I would have enough for everything. What surprised me most was realizing that I didn't miss the visits to that house where they treated me badly. For years, I had confused obligation with love, duty with affection. I had believed that keeping the family peace was more important than keeping my dignity. But there, sitting in my modest living room with my cheap flowers and my expensive strawberries, I understood that the peace I had maintained all these years was just my silence in the face of mistreatment. It wasn't real peace. It was resignation. Around 6 in the evening, Carmen knocked on my door. "Helen, my daughter brought me tamales from the best place in East LA. Do you want to have dinner together?" It had been years since I had dinner with someone who invited me without ulterior motives, without wanting something from me, without the meal being an excuse to ask for money or reproach me for something. We ate at my small table with the flowers in the center, talking about simple things: the weather, the plants in the courtyard, the innocent gossip of the building. Carmen told me about her grandchildren who visited her every Sunday, who fought over who bought her the nicest gifts, who called just to ask how she was. "You raise children so they'll love you, right? Not so they'll support you, or so you can support them for their whole lives." Her words were like a ray of light in the darkness where I had lived for so long. You raise children to be loved, not to become your personal ATM. That night, after Carmen left and I was alone in my apartment, I didn't turn on my phone. For the first time in years, I didn't want to know if I had messages, if someone needed me, if there was some emergency that required my money. I went to bed early, in my small but comfortable bed, and before falling asleep, I thought of something I hadn't considered in decades. What did I want to do tomorrow to make myself happy? Not to please Ethan, not to keep Patricia happy, not to prove I was a good mother, just to be happy. And for the first time in years, I fell asleep smiling. On Friday afternoon, when I got home from work, I found a scene I will never forget. Parked in front of my building was Ethan's SUV, and there, sitting on the curb like beggars, were him, Patricia, and Sophia. The three of them were waiting for me with funereal faces, as if I had died, and they were the mourners. Ethan stood up as soon as he saw me. He had deep dark circles under his eyes. His shirt was wrinkled, and he had that expression of desperation I had only seen when he was a teenager and had failed math. "Mom, please, we need to talk. It's been 5 days without a payment. The bank sent us a notice." Patricia was holding Sophia in her arms, even though the girl was too big for that. It was obvious they had brought my granddaughter as an emotional shield, as the heavy artillery of their manipulation. "Grandma, why are you mad at us?" Sophia asked with that little voice that could break hearts. The neighbors in the building started peeking out their windows. Carmen came out to sweep her doorstep but was clearly listening to the whole conversation. Mr. Aurelio turned down his radio. Even the children playing in the courtyard fell silent, as if sensing they were witnessing something important. "I'm not mad, sweetie," I said to Sophia, but without getting closer to them. "I'm just tired." "Mom, stop the drama," Ethan interrupted. "We need to resolve this like adults. We can't go on like this." Drama. After 5 days of peace, after sleeping soundly for the first time in years, after remembering what it was like to eat without guilt, he was still calling my decision to value myself drama. "Do you want to come up and talk?" I offered, more out of respect for the neighbors than any desire to have them in my home. We climbed the 3 flights of stairs in silence. Sophia held Patricia's hand, looking back at me every couple of steps as if I were a stranger. When I opened the door to my apartment, the contrast was brutal. They came from the air conditioning of their SUV, from expensive perfume, from leather seats, and now they were in my modest living room, with my old furniture and my market flowers. Patricia perched on the edge of the armchair, as if afraid of sinking in too deep. Ethan paced back and forth like a caged lion. Only Sophia acted naturally, heading straight for my small television. "Mom, this has to be resolved today," Ethan began without preamble. "I already spoke with the bank. If we pay before Monday, they can waive the interest, but I need you to transfer the money right now. Right now. As if I were an ATM that had been out of order and now had to work on demand. And what if I don't pay?" "What do you mean, what if you don't pay?" "Mom, you can't be serious." "I'm very serious. What happens if I never pay again?" Patricia shot to her feet as if stung by a bee. "You can't do that. It's our house. Sophia lives there. It's my house too. My name is on the deed. My money built it. My savings paid for the down payment. But we live there, Ethan shouted. It's our home, and this is mine, I said, gesturing to my living room with my market flowers. But you never cared if I had a decent place to live. I went to the nightstand where I kept my important documents. I pulled out a folder I had been organizing during these 5 days of mental clarity. It contained every receipt from bank transfers, every proof of payment I had made for 11 years. Do you want to see how much money I've put into that house you claim is only yours? I spread the papers out on my small table. Patricia approached with morbid curiosity, like someone looking at a car crash. Down payment, $20,000 from my savings. Monthly payments for 11 years, $2,500 a month. That comes to $330,000. From my money. Patricia went pale. Ethan sat down heavily in my plastic chair. Plus the extra expenses, I continued, pulling out another stack of receipts. The SUV when Sophia was born, $40,000. The trip to Cancun for your delayed honeymoon, $5,000. The living room furniture you love so much, $15,000. Sophia's enrollment in private school, $10,000. Each amount was a stab to them and a liberation for me. For the first time in years, I was seeing clearly how much of my life I had given away, how many sacrifices I had made, how much love I had bought with money I didn't have to spare. Do you know what all of this adds up to? Over $400,000. Almost $500,000 that a woman who works in a dry cleaners has given you over 11 years. Sophia had stopped watching television and was looking at us with those big eyes that understood more than adults thought. But Mom, Ethan mumbled, we never asked you to do all of that. Really? You never asked me for anything? I took out my phone and searched through my saved messages. For years, I had kept the texts where they asked me for money for emergencies. Mom, the refrigerator broke. Can you help us with $1,500 for a new one? I read aloud. Mom, Sophia needs a new uniform for ballet. It's $300. Mom, we got a flat tire on the SUV and need new tires. Can you deposit $800? With every message I read, Ethan shrank further into his chair. Patricia stared at the floor as if it were the most fascinating thing in the world. Do you want me to keep going? I have 11 years of messages. 11 years of emergencies that were always solved by your personal ATM. Oh, shoo, all right, Patricia interrupted. We get it, you've spent a lot of money, but that's in the past. Now we need to think about the future, about Sophia. Always Sophia. They always used my granddaughter as the ultimate trump card to manipulate me. Do you know what Sophia needs? I asked, looking directly at Patricia. She needs to grow up in a family that teaches values. A family where grandparents are respected, where sacrifice is valued, where people aren't treated like ATMs. Huh, but we do respect you, Ethan yelled. You respect me? Is it respect to tell me I stink? Is it respect to not invite me to dinner in the house I pay for? Is it respect to forget my birthday but remember the mortgage due date? The silence that followed was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Sophia came over to me and took my hand. Grandma, are you not going to love me anymore? That question broke my heart, but it also gave me the final strength I needed. Sophia, I will love you for my whole life, but loving doesn't mean letting people hurt me. Loving doesn't mean giving away my dignity. Loving doesn't mean living to make others happy while I'm miserable. I knelt down to be at her eye level. You know what I learned this week, sweetheart? I learned that when a person respects themselves, they can love others better. Your grandma's heart was very sick because she had forgotten to love herself. Patricia and Ethan exchanged panicked glances. They were realizing they had no power over a woman who had decided to value herself. So, what do you want? Ethan asked, his voice cracking. I want that if you come to visit me, it's because you actually want to be with me. Not because you need money. I want you to treat me like a person who deserves respect, not like an employee. I want Sophia to grow up seeing a grandmother who values herself, not a martyr who sacrifices herself to death. And the house? The house is no longer my problem. If you can't afford it on your own, sell it. If you lose it, find something you can afford with your own money. Patricia started to cry, but these were no longer the tears that broke my heart. They were tears of lost privilege, not tears of genuine pain. What if we promised to treat you better? Ethan asked desperately. I believed the promises your father made when he said he would change. I don't buy promises anymore, Ethan. Now I only accept actions. They left that afternoon empty-handed, but I was left with my hands full of something priceless, my recovered dignity. Through the window, I watched them get into their SUV. Ethan slammed the steering wheel in anger. Patricia was crying. Sophia waved goodbye to me with her little hand from the back window. And I, for the first time in 11 years, felt no guilt for not giving them what they wanted. I felt relief. The first few days after the confrontation were strange. It was like waking up from a very long dream and not remembering what life was like before you fell asleep. I woke up every morning without that heavy feeling in my chest, without the anxiety that had been my faithful companion for 11 years. The silence from my phone, which would have worried me before, now seemed like a beautiful melody. On Monday, Carmen knocked on my door earlier than usual. "Helen, my friend Rosario told me they're giving knitting classes at the community center in the Arts District. Do you want to go check it out?" I hadn't knitted in decades. When Ethan was little, I made him sweaters and scarves with my own hands. But when he started being embarrassed to wear homemade clothes, I had put my needles away in a box along with many other pieces of myself. "I don't know, Carmen. I'm too old to learn new things." "Oh, what are you saying? My cousin started learning piano at 70 and now she plays at her church. You're never too old to be happy." That phrase stuck with me. You're never too old to be happy. That afternoon, we walked to the community center. It was a small but cozy building, with rooms full of natural light and round tables where women of all ages worked with colorful yarn. The instructor, a woman in her 50s with silver hair in a braid, greeted us with a genuine smile. "Welcome. I'm Hope. And here we all learn together. It doesn't matter if you've never knitted or if you're an expert. The important thing is to have a nice time." I sat next to Carmen and took the needles they offered me. My hands, wrinkled from the dry cleaner's chemicals, trembled a little at first. But as they remembered the movements, something magical happened. It was as if a part of me that had been dormant for years suddenly woke up. "You have a natural knitter's hands," Hope said, watching my work. "I can tell you've done this before." "Yes, but I stopped a long time ago." "Why?" The question was simple, but the answer pained me. "Because my family didn't like what I made." Hope looked at me with understanding, as if she had heard that story many times before. "Well, now you're making something for yourself. That's what matters." For 2 hours, I knitted in silence, listening to the conversations of the other women. They talked about their grandchildren, their husbands, the soap operas, recipes, but no one complained about being exploited by their family. No one mentioned sacrificing their dignity to keep the peace. They were conversations of women who allowed themselves to be happy. When we left, Carmen and I walked slowly through the streets of the Arts District, looking at the cafes with patios where people read books and drank coffee without rushing. "You know what, Helen? You look different." "Different how?" "More present. Like before you were here but not really here. You know what I mean?" I understood perfectly. For years, I had been living for others, not truly inhabiting my own life. That night, for the first time in decades, I started calculating not how much money I needed for others' expenses, but how much I had for my own projects. With the $2,500 a month I was no longer sending to Ethan's house, I could do many things. I could buy my medicine without rationing pills. I could eat fresh fruit every day. I could paint my apartment. I could buy new clothes instead of mending the old ones. I could save for a trip. A trip. It had been 15 years since I had left Los Angeles. There had always been excuses. The money was for family emergencies, for Ethan's expenses, for Sophia's future, never for Helen's present. The following Wednesday, instead of going straight home after work, I got off the subway at Union Station. I wanted to walk through downtown like a tourist in my own city. I had lived here my whole life, but always in a hurry, always worried, always on my way to solve someone else's problems. I sat on a bench in Grand Park and bought a grilled corn from a man with a cart. It was expensive, $8, but I told myself I could afford it. As I ate, I watched the tourist couples taking pictures, the groups of students laughing, the families strolling leisurely, and I realized something surprising. I also had a right to these simple moments of happiness. A boy of about 8 came up to my bench. "Ma'am, can you take a picture of me with my family?" I took several pictures of that happy family. the young parents, 3 smiling children, all hugging in front of City Hall. When I finished, the mother asked me, "Do you want us to take a picture of you too?" My first instinct was to say no, but I stopped myself. Why not? Why couldn't I have one nice memory from a day that was just for me? Yes, please. I stood in front of City Hall with a smile I hadn't rehearsed to please anyone. It was my real smile, the one that had been hidden for years. When I saw the photo on my phone, I almost didn't recognize myself. It was a woman who looked free. That night I called my sister Hope in Austin. "Hope, do you remember how we always wanted to go see Santa Fe?" "Oh, yes. Ever since we were girls, we said we'd go see the beautiful adobe houses. What if we go now?" "Now? Are you serious?" "Serious. I have money saved up and free time. Why not?" The silence on the other end worried me for a moment. "Helen, are you okay? You've never suggested a trip like this out of the blue in your entire life." "I'm better than okay, Hope. I'm awake." Hope laughed with that laugh that reminded me of our childhood. "Well, let's go then. It's about time you did something for yourself." On Friday, I requested my first vacation days in 5 years. Mr. Roberts was surprised. "Helen, you never take a vacation. Are you sure you're all right?" "I'm perfect, Mr. Roberts. I just need to live a little." I bought my Greyhound bus ticket to meet Hope for the following Monday. It was a big expense, $150. But when I took the money out of my account, I didn't feel guilt. I felt excitement. On Sunday, while packing my small suitcase, I found a scarf among my clothes that I had knitted for Ethan years ago. It was navy blue, his favorite color back then. He never wore it, and I had kept it as evidence of my failure to please him. I touched it, remembering the hours I had spent making it with love. But now, instead of sadness, I felt compassion for the woman I had been, that woman who believed her worth depended on how much she could give to others. I folded the scarf and placed it at the bottom of my suitcase, not to give it to someone else, but to remember the journey I had taken. That night, sitting in my living room with my market flowers, which I had already replaced twice because I liked having something beautiful around, I thought about everything that had changed in less than a month. I no longer lived in fear of the telephone. I no longer obsessively calculated my expenses based on others' needs. I no longer woke up every day feeling guilty for existing. I had recovered something I didn't know I had lost: my own company. I could be alone without feeling abandoned. I could make decisions without asking for permission. I could spend money on myself without justifying it. For the first time in years, when I looked in the mirror before bed, I liked the woman I saw. She wasn't young. She wasn't rich. She wasn't perfect. But she was free, and she had paid for that freedom with the highest price there is. She stopped buying love with money, but it was also the cheapest price. Because in the end, the only love that truly matters is the love you have for yourself. 6 months later, I'm sitting in the small garden of the apartment I rented in Silver Lake, watching the sunset while I knit a blanket for myself. It's violet, my favorite color. The one that for years I didn't allow myself to wear because it wasn't appropriate for my age, according to Patricia. The trip to Santa Fe with my sister had been the beginning of something I never imagined possible: a new life at 63. We walked through the charming, earthy-toned streets, ate ice cream like little girls, and took pictures on every beautiful corner. For the first time in decades, I felt like a whole person, not a fragment of what others needed me to be. My new apartment is small but bright. It has 2 bedrooms, one for me and one I've turned into my knitting studio. The walls are painted a soft yellow, a color that brightens up gray days. I have plants in every window, fresh flowers on the dining table, and books I buy without guilt from the corner bookstore. The money that used to go to maintaining Ethan's lifestyle now stays with me. I was able to afford dental work I'd put off for years. I bought new glasses, and I updated my wardrobe with clothes I actually like, regardless of whether they're appropriate or not. For the first time in my life, I allowed myself to have nice things just because they make me happy. I left my job at the dry cleaners. Mr. Roberts understood when I explained that I needed to find something that wouldn't damage my hands or my health. Now I teach knitting classes 3 times a week at the community center and sell my creations at a small arts and crafts co-op in the neighborhood. I don't earn as much as before, but it's enough to live without anxiety and with dignity. My students have taught me as much as I've taught them. There are women of all ages, some young professionals looking to de-stress from work, others who are older and want to fill their widowed afternoons, some mothers who need a space of their own. They all arrive with their stories, their pains, their deferred dreams. Last week, a woman my age, Maria, came in crying because her children had put her in a nursing home after selling the house she had lived in for 50 years. Helen, do you think a woman my age can start over? Look at my hands, I told her, showing her the needles that were knitting nonstop. These hands were asleep for 30 years, but when I woke up, they remembered everything they knew and learned new things. Maria now comes every week. She has knitted her first scarf in decades and talks about moving into a small apartment of her own. I know little about Ethan and Patricia. Carmen told me they had to sell the house in Beverly Hills and move to an apartment in a more modest area. Ethan got a second job doing freelance accounting. Patricia went back to work at a bank, something she swore she would never do after getting married. Sophia called me a month ago. She had just turned 6 and her little voice sounded more mature over the phone. "Grandma, can I come visit you?" "Of course you can, sweetie. But your parents have to bring you. Daddy says you're mad at us." "I'm not mad, my love. I'm just in a different place." "In your new house?" "Yes, but also in my heart. When you're older, you'll understand." The visit was strange but healing. Ethan arrived with Sophia on a Sunday afternoon. He looked thinner, more tired, but also less arrogant. He wasn't wearing the brand-name shirt or the expensive shoes from before. "Hi, Mom," he said, without looking me directly in the eyes. "Hi, son." Sophia ran to explore my new apartment with a child's natural curiosity. She stopped in front of my weaving loom, fascinated by the colors. "Grandma, this is so pretty. Did you make all of this?" "Yes, sweetie. Do you like it?" "I love it. Can you teach me?" We spent the afternoon knitting together. Sophia learned to make a basic chain stitch while telling me about her new school, her friends, and how she now helps her mom with the dishes because we don't have a helper anymore. Ethan sat in my living room, looking at the photos I have on the wall. My trip to Santa Fe, my knitting students, my blooming plants. It was as if he were seeing a woman he didn't know. "Mom, are you happy?" he asked when Sophia went to the bathroom. "Very happy, son. Don't you miss us?" The question was genuine, without manipulation. For the first time in years, Ethan was asking about my feelings without a hidden agenda. "I miss you, but I don't miss the pain." "What, was it that bad?" "Yes, Ethan, it was very bad." He was quiet for a long time, looking at his hands as if seeing them for the first time. "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't know. I didn't understand. Now you know. That's what matters." When they left that afternoon, Sophia hugged me tightly. "Grandma, can I come again?" "Whenever you want, sweetie. But only if you come because you want to be with me, not because you need something from me." Ethan looked at me surprised. "The same rule applies to you," I clarified. "You can come whenever you want, but only if you come out of love." It's been 3 weeks since that visit. They haven't been back, but they also haven't called asking for money. It's as if they finally understand that the relationship has changed forever. This afternoon, as I knit my violet blanket and watch the sun set behind the buildings of Silver Lake, I think about all that I lost and all that I gained. I lost a house that was never mine. I lost a family that saw me as an ATM. I lost the false security of being needed, but I gained something much more valuable. I gained respect for myself. I gained the freedom to live without guilt. I gained the ability to be happy without anyone's permission. I gained true friends who love me unconditionally. I gained nights of peaceful sleep. I gained the joy of discovering that at 63, life is just beginning when you decide to live it for yourself. The phone rings. It's my sister, Hope, who calls me every week to plan our next trip. This time she wants to see New Orleans. "Sister, what do you think about going in December? They say it's the most beautiful time of year." "Sounds perfect. I've already got my travel savings." My travel savings. Words I never thought I'd be able to say. I hang up the phone and return to my knitting. Every stitch is an affirmation. I am worthy. I deserve this. I exist for myself. The violet blanket grows in my hands, just as I have grown in these months. Slowly, with patience, with self-love. It's starting to rain outside, but inside, everything is warmth and peace. Because I learned the most important lesson of my life. You can't buy true love with money, but you can lose your dignity trying. And I also learned that it is never, ever too late to choose freedom. Have you experienced something similar? Do you know someone who has had to choose between keeping family peace and keeping their dignity? Tell me in the comments. If this story touched your heart, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel so this message can reach someone else who needs to hear it. Sometimes, the stories that hurt the most are the ones that heal the most. And remember, your value isn't measured by what you can give to others, but by what you give to yourself.